Media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What is going on? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is not toxic. Today is Thursday, August 20th in the year of our Lord 2026, and we have a ton of stuff to get into. Some of the stuff I didn't get to last time we were together that I'm going to try and get in. But we have a ton of stuff to get into and some updates as well. But as you can see from the title and thumbnail, we're going to be talking about the doctrines behind Islam's political rise. And we're told constantly that Islam doesn't represent the extremists, that it's a religion of peace, but we're almost never encouraged to actually ask what it is that Islam teaches. So tonight we're going to get into Taqiyya and look beyond some of the other teachings that involve deception. If Islam's political power is on the rise, and it is, we need to know what they teach. And so we got that we're going to get into. We're going to update a couple of stories that we talked about before. We're going to talk about some really disturbing things that are going on in DC. First, before we really get going into the meat of the show, there's an update on the Carmelo Anthony case. And Carmelo Anthony, a lot of his supporters are happy because the judge was removed from the case. The original judge was removed from the case. But some other updates have come to light. Some things that, had they been introduced at trial, things might have been a little bit different. His girlfriend said that she broke up with him and he started stalking her. And he's told her that he was on the verge. It doesn't really specify what, but she suspects it's something violent. And it turns out that Carmelo Anthony, based on material that they had an obsession with wanting to stab someone. He had an obsession with wanting to stab someone and licking the blood off of the knife. This is a text message from him. And to top it all off, and I can't believe that his supporters are still backing this monster, but his parents actually sent him to a special program for children who could not keep their hands to themselves. Imagine that. I know some of you are just beyond shocked. And the thing is, the prosecution and the defense agreed to not allow this information to be shown to the jury. And because the prosecution believed that they had enough without it to convict. But the thing is, if some of this information had been presented to the jury, it shows, to me, it shows premeditation. And it was a lack of premeditation that was presented that led to the sentence of 35 years rather than life. So even though they had enough to convict, obviously, 35 years, and I've said this many times when talking about this subject, was not enough. And now there's a really good possibility that this kid will be out in 17 years. Now, if there is a new trial and this information is brought to light, well, then that could change things, but we'll see how that goes. The other thing I wanted to update real quick, I talked about baby Gabriel not too long ago. This was the baby that was the surrogate was paid to carry this baby. Come to find out, there was a birth defect. The birth parents, the biological parents wanted to abort the baby, and she said no. So now she's in dealing with some legal issues, and but now these bio parents actually want the baby. They told her to terminate because they clearly didn't want the kid because he wasn't their idea of perfect, I guess, whatever the case may be. And so now they're suing her for a breach of contract, which this should a baby is not a political football. A baby is a miracle. And to want to snuff that out, to sue someone for not doing it and then say, oh yeah, no, we decided we want the baby now. What? They said in court filings, they said that they wanted this baby to be terminated. But then they turn around and say publicly that they always wanted what's best for the baby. I'm sorry. What's best for the baby is not killing it. Killing him, that's not what's best for any baby. Late-term abortion is not what's best for a baby. But now that there's a spotlight, now that I don't know, but McKenna West has been barred from having any contact with the baby. I don't know if custody has been awarded yet, but a baby is not a commodity. And a mother's womb isn't something that should be available for rent. This is just a sad story all around. So we'll keep an eye on it, see what develops. Hopefully these monsters do not get custody of this baby boy. But we'll see, because they're in California. You know how that goes. All right, let's get into the meat of this, because I talk about Islam and the threat that it poses a lot. And I've also mentioned Taqiyya a lot. Islam has some doctrines of deception, and we're not going to get into all of them. I believe there's 9. One of them, the most popular one that I talk about, Taqiyya, but there are a few others, and we'll mention those here as well, and maybe do a deeper dive on each one in the coming weeks. But Islamic legal and theological sources say that concealing your beliefs, concealing or misleading people who are not Muslims is not just permissible, but in some cases, obligatory. So we're going to get into taqiyya. We're going to talk about some of the history of it, and then get into what it means today. Now, the original, the root of the word taqiyya is prudence or caution or to shield oneself. And under Sharia law, which is what they're looking to impose, it is permissible and obligatory in some cases if Islamic believer believes that they are going to be harmed in some way by non-Muslims. Surah 328 in the Quran says, do not take unbelievers as friends or allies. And 16:106, verbal denial of faith under compulsion while the heart remains firm, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, is acceptable. And we can see, if you're paying attention and if you understand what this means, what this is, you see it with every Islamic politician in the spotlight right now. And I have a glaring case of it that I think we'll try to get to towards the end here. But it's this idea of outward friendliness, but inward hostility. And when you frame it that way, pretty much everything that they say can be looked at in those terms. They smile on your face while they curse you inwardly or behind your back. They have some other some other doctrines aside from taqiyya, like darura, which I've mentioned before, and a few others. But we need to understand this. We need to embrace the idea that they hate us. I played a clip before of El-Sayed saying outright, out loud, Muslims hate you. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people don't believe them when they say this. And one of the things that I've seen in the comments when I've talked about this in the past is that I should read the Quran. Well, I have. I read the Quran right after 9/11. I don't have it memorized. I have to look things up, but I did read it. So if that's going to be your complaint about what I say here, I don't know what to tell you, because I did. Anyway, moving on. Taqiyya, the concept of deception in taqiyya and all the other doctrines that they have came about because in the beginning, when Muhammad was forming his alliances, his faction was in the minority. And so he felt like he needed to bide his time until he could grow the numbers and then take over. Does that sound familiar to anyone? If you're paying attention, it should. So they viewed this as a survival technique, so to speak. And even though there are different sects of Islamists, the Sunnis, the Shia, and some other even smaller factions, all practice this in one form or another. What happens is, and there's less of a need to practice this type of deception when they're politically dominant. They're not politically dominant yet. And by the will of God, hopefully they never will be in this country. They're getting there in some other places, but we'll see how that goes. People are starting to rise up and oppose this more vigorously, and hopefully that continues. But when Muslims are under a non-Muslim authority or at war, this is basically obligatory for the Muslims. And in the hadith, one of the hadiths, I believe it's, I don't know which one it is, but there's a hadith which is basically a primary source for Islamic doctrine that is basically on par with the Quran. These texts were written afterwards, and they hold the same authority. And I admit I've only read bits and pieces of different ones. So there's that. But in one of the hadiths, one of the doctrines is that war is deceit. And in the Quran, Allah is described as the master of all schemers. Oh, you can't really see that. Sorry. There we go. Anyway, Allah is the master of all schemers in Surah 13:42, I think it is. And in Surah 8:30, he is profound in his machinations. What does that mean? Well, for Christians, this should hold real significance, because the Bible describes Satan as the father of lies. So what does that tell you? When you hear people describe Islam as a demonic cult or religion, well, there you go. And I could get into some of the other things, but we don't really have time for that. But I will get into it. I will get into that part of it a little deeper, because I'm not going to stop talking about Islam. I'm not going to stop talking about the threat that Islam poses. And so as long as there's something to talk about with regard to explaining why this is, I'm going to do it. When it comes to Islam and Islamists insinuating themselves into societies and then gradually taking control, you hear this thing a lot when people bring up taqiyya, and when people bring up the deception, when people bring up the idea that Islam wants to take over, even though it's amazing. You hear these imams say it in plain English all the time, and then they say, well, no, that's not true. And one of the verses in the Quran that they use to prove that concept is that they say that there's no compulsion in religion. But that's just one one verse, because Surah 2:256 in Muhammad's early writings, let there be no compulsion in religion. But then later on, after he gains political power, he says, do they desire a way other than Allah's, knowing that all those in the heavens and the earth submit to his will willingly or unwillingly, and that to him they will be returned. So that unwillingly part, they leave that part out when they say there's no compulsion. Obviously there is. And when they get enough political power, that's exactly how they operate. That's how they spread through all the Christian countries in the Middle East and North Africa and Spain. They insinuated themselves. They gained political power. They grew their numbers, and then they took over and made sure everyone became a Muslim or killed them. There are three examples of this. There is the Battle of the Trench, when a soldier was sent back. A soldier was captured, converted to Islam, sent back to his former compatriots, and started to sow seeds of discord to get them to abandon the battle. War is deceit. Then there's the killing of there was a poet who made some disparaging remarks about Allah, and they sent somebody in to get close to him, and he said he would do it if he had permission to lie to him. He lied to him, got close to him, chopped his head off when he was able to get close enough, and brought his head back to Muhammad and said, Allahu Akbar. Then there's a really compelling parallel to what we see today, especially with what's going on in Iran right now, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad put a 10-year limit on peace treaties, that they could only be good for 10 years. And if something came along within those intervening 10 years, whatever oath you took, you are permitted to break if something better comes along. We see that in every negotiation, not just what's going on right now. Every time you try to negotiate with them, they just buy their time. And that's all it is. They buy their time until something better comes along. Or they are able to rearm. They're able to repopulate. They're able to do whatever they need to do in those intervening times under those treaties to come back and go back to war. And like I said, we see it all the time, and we're seeing it right now. And it's one of the most frustrating things about President Trump and this war that we're dealing with right now, because it's known. This is a known tactic that they use. And I do not understand why we continue to go down that road. This is not new. This is something that they have been doing for 1,400 years. And the fact that we continue to tolerate it and explain it away and hide behind freedom of religion, it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game that we're playing. And 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 they know it. They know it. Takia is the concept of presenting a mild public face while still carrying out your obligations and moving towards the goals of protecting and spreading Islam. Now, there's another example that you see less often, but you see it especially when it comes to people who are actually committing terrorist acts, called Maruna. And that's a way to get people to lower their guard. And so this allows Muslims to shave their beards. This allows Muslims to drink alcohol. This allows Muslims to engage in behaviors that would be halal, would be illegal if they were in a strict Sharia compliant setting. But if it allows them to conduct an operation, whether that's a terrorist operation or intelligence gathering, whatever it may be, they're allowed to do that. We saw this with the 9/11 hijackers. This is why you may see Muslims in bars and clubs. Some people believe that Huma Abedin's marriage is a case of Maruna. Huma Abedin, she was married to Anthony Weiner, and she was one of a close associate of Hillary Clinton. This is also one of the reasons why they are so good at deceiving people, because they feel no guilt, because they're doing what they believe they are obligated to do. People very often are very good at spotting when somebody's being untruthful. There are markers that you can look at, that you can observe in people. But when you are certain in your belief that what you're doing is right, those markers are no longer present. And this is what's taught to every Muslim. These are the doctrines that they employ. Now, I talked about Takia, I talked about Maruna. There's a couple of others. There's Tariya, which is, this is more of a mild form of it when, say somebody wishes a Muslim Merry Christmas, and they say, back at you, or something that doesn't actually invoke Christmas, but in passing, people don't really pay much attention to it. That is, like I said, that's a milder form of it, and not really a huge deal, but it's still something to be aware of. But the next one is Kitman. And Kitman is basically the lie of omission. And we talked about where they say that let there be no compulsion in religion. And then we talked about the next phase of that in a later verse. And there was a very, very compelling, very obvious example of this by Abdul El-Sayed. And I want you to take a look at this because this is so obvious. And like I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you'll see it all the time. But let's check this out.
You know, one of the most frustrating things is that there's this notion that somehow when Muslims are trying to organize politically, that there's this effort to push a certain ideology. There's this verse in the Quran that says "La ikraha fi din," which literally means there is no compulsion in faith. So if you're not doing a certain thing out of your faith, compelling people to follow a certain set of faith or a certain set of laws out of their faith, or a certain set of commandments, like faith is kind of the thing itself.
This is a podcast he did with some progressive Christians. And if you watch the whole thing, you'll realize just how ridiculous this whole thing is. But I talked about this before, but we're gonna let him finish because there's more to it.
So there is no compulsion in religion. Your job is to live out your faith and to try to do so in a way where you're offering dignity and opportunity for other people, not to compel them to behave in any sort of way, but to try and create a level of freedom where people have the right to choose how they want to live their lives.
There is no right to choose anything in Sharia. And I talked about, I think it was the last show we did, he said in his own words, he is Sharia until he dies. But he thinks we're stupid. He thinks that we don't understand what is at stake here. But let's continue.
If they want to pray at all, how they want to pray, who they want to love, how they want to engage in the world. And I think that those two tent poles you see quite a bit in at least our campaign, and we hope to bring that out and to empower others as well.
Lies, all lies. And so he brought up that verse. There's no compulsion in religion, or faith is the word he used. And I read the rebuttal to that, which was written later in Muhammad's so-called revelation. And he says that everyone will submit willingly or unwillingly. There's another example in Surah 22:39 where he says that you have permission to take up arms against those. Permission to take up arms is hereby given to those who are attacked because they have been wronged. But then later on in Surah 9:5, he says, when the sacred months are over, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, arrest them, besiege them, and lie in ambush everywhere for them. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. And if that's not what they meant, then why do we have all of these jihadists going around blowing themselves up, blowing other people up, hijacking planes? It's obvious why. And these are doctrines that are taught to Muslims from the beginning. Islamic children are required to memorize the Quran at an early age. So this is stuff that is ingrained in every single one of them. which is why I have no problem calling people like Mehdi Hassan and Hassan Piker jihadists. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything that comes out of their mouths is an example of taqiyya. Everything that comes out of their mouths is an example of some form of deception in order to advance the cause of Islam. And especially when you have proof, especially in Mehdi Hassan's case, I've played it numerous times, where he talks about infidels and kufars and how infidels and kufars are animals, and it's on my X feed. You can just search anywhere and you'll find it. It's all over the place. And we all know about Hassan Piker. And if we have time, there's a few other ones from Hassan Piker. I will give Hassan Piker this. He's truthful. He's not engaging, I don't believe, in a lot of this deception. He's coming straight up and saying, hey, I'm a communist. I hate America. And so I guess I can give him that. But all right. I spent a lot more time on that than I thought I would. So let's just go ahead and close that segment out. It's something that we're going to be talking about until this threat is over. Until this threat is over is something I'm going to be talking about extensively. So let's go ahead and get a word in from our sponsor. And our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And every month you pay a phone bill anyway. So why not support a company that actually shares your values? Patriot Mobile, as I said, is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And they help fund pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom organizations and causes. So if that is something that you are interested in, feel free to check them out. You can get a free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Jackson. Patriot Mobile, and use promo code Jackson. Call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Jackson. Make your money work for your principles. Visit patriotmobile.com today. All right. We just got done talking about one enemy. Let's talk about another one. The DSA. The DSA hates America. They hate the Constitution. They love communism. And people will say, you don't know what communism is. You don't know what socialism is. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just repeating what they say. These are their words. They are all over social media saying these things. And yet they talk about defending democracy and protecting the Constitution while they have leaders in their movement on camera bragging that he's famous for hating the Constitution. Cliff Connolly is I believe he's the president of the DSA's national political committee, and he serves on their steering committee. And he was on a podcast where he made some crazy arguments. And let's go ahead and get into this, and then we'll talk about it. Not that one, that one. There we go.
Is of the DSA caucuses that believe in democracy as an end goal, MUG is the only one that sees revolution as a necessity to get there. And of the caucuses in DSA that see the necessity of revolution, we're the only ones that see democracy as the end goal. So the two things that we're famous for is our commitment to a program and our hatred of the United States Constitution.
He didn't want to say it. He kind of hesitated, but he knows it's true, and he didn't have any other way to couch it in any kind of euphemistic language. So he just came right out and said it. But it gets better.
And what the program does is it gives us a roadmap to revolution, and it gives us the obstacle that we finally will have to get over to have a revolution, which is the United States Constitution, the basis of the United States government. And what the minimum maximum program specifically, what that format specifically gives us is that roadmap. It gives us the minimum circumstances under which we would be able to take power and govern. And it gives us the maximum program, which is the goals that we're actually aiming for. It also...
And the goal is communism. They've said it before. And after this clip, I'm going to show you their website where it says exactly that.
Clarifies democracy as both the end goal and as part of the process to get there, ensures the internal party democracy that we want to see in DSA. So it really wraps up the revolutionary tradition of democracy that I think socialism and abolitionism in the United States have always been a part of, and aims at,
And when he says abolitionism, he's talking about abolishing the Constitution. I just want to make that clear. That's what he means.
At a future that we can live in as a human species, because I think absent a revolutionary democratic socialist republic in North America, we may not have a livable future.
Oh my goodness, this dude. I mean, some of the things that come out of their mouths is just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. But this is, oh, you can't see it. Here we go. This is the MUG website, the Marxist Unity Group website, which is a faction of the DSA. And this is what I wanted to highlight. And I guess it's still kind of hard to see, but I'll just read part of it. The Marxist Unity Group works toward adopting a minimum maximum program for the DSA, which is what he was just alluding to. We view both the minimum and maximum program as essential. The minimum refers to the party's comprehensive platform, blah, blah, blah. The maximum program refers to the results of this process: a world free of the market, borders, classes, and all of the oppressive structures that exist under capitalism. In a word, communism. Right there on the website for all to see. And so when people say, when you bring this up and people say, you don't know what communism is, you don't know what socialism is, they are telling us this is what they want. So are we just not supposed to believe them? Are we supposed to believe that they don't know what they're talking about and just brush it off? That's stupid. They know exactly what they're talking about. They know exactly what they want. And the defenders of this, the apologists, they're just stupid. There's no other way to say it. They're just stupid. They're stupid, ignorant, or they're just lying. It's one of those three. That was it's so when they say these things, it's not a gaffe. They're not misspeaking. They are describing exactly what they want. They are describing the exact product that they want to deliver. Now, people will say, well, that was a year ago. Yeah, and so it was a year ago, and just last week, within the past month, you had several of the DSA leadership, several members of the DSA leadership on national TV saying exactly the same thing. So the fact that that particular clip was a year ago doesn't mean a thing. The fact that this website is up and still says this, that what else are we supposed to go on? Just because some rando on the internet says, you don't know what socialism is, you don't know what communism is. They're not communists. We're just supposed to, oh, okay, yeah, fine, sure, whatever. No, they're telling us. They're telling us, and they're aligning themselves with Islamic jihadists. This is another threat. They would be a threat all by themselves, but now they're aligning themselves with the jihadists. And yeah, El-Sayed says he's not a member of the DSA. All of his programs and policies, all of them align with DSA. His lesbian sister is a member of the DSA and a jihadist, which I'm not really sure how that works as a lesbian, but I guess she's going to stay out of the Middle East. But anyway, moving on. The DSA, and there are people out there who say that, and there's polling to suggest that this far left DSA wing of the party is dragging them down, but they're well funded. They're growing. They've grown quite a bit in the past 10 years, and they're doing a really good job at recruiting young people in high school and college, because all of their teachers and instructors are aligned with this Marxist nonsense. So, as a side note, get your kids out of government schools, period, because this is what they grow up to be. I've talked about before how if you're working outside the home and you send your kids to school and then they have activities and all these other things, you don't spend as much time with them as you would like to believe. If you actually sit down, I'm not going to go through it all right now, the math right now. If you actually sit down and calculate how much time you actually spend with your school-age children, if you and your husband or your wife work outside the home and they have daycare and school and all this other stuff, sorry to burst your bubble, but it's not as much as you think. Just putting that out there as food for thought. But anyway, these Marxists, they're not hiding. These DSA lunatics, they're not hiding anymore. They are coming right out and telling us that the Constitution is the obstacle. And what do I always say? When they tell you who they are, believe them. All right. I'd like to say I'm going to pivot to something else, but we have another story of another enemy that is making headway in this country. And this one is, it's hard to say which one is the worst. It depends on your point of view, I guess. But there is an official with a long documented career in Shanghai's Public Security Bureau, which is China's version of, I guess you could say, the Secret Service. It's part of their security apparatus. And this guy also has special forces and sniper training. And he has had senior roles in the CCP's United Front Work Department. And he just bought a historic building for $8.5 million, 650 feet away from the White House. A trained sniper has control of a building 650 feet away from the White House. How this was allowed to happen is absolutely mystifying. Mystifying to me. It boggles the mind that this was allowed to happen. This is a rendering. This is the White House complex right here in this bottom circle. And then up here, we have the building that he purchased on 15th Street. For a trained sniper, that is almost a chip shot. Now, this guy is as I said, he was a detective in the criminal investigation team, combat and sniper training. He actually posted the top score in one of their competitions. So he knows what he's doing. And that is a chip shot. And about a quarter of a mile away from the White House, a little bit further than this building, his family actually owns another building. So he has a Chinese spy has operational control of two buildings within a quarter mile of the White House. Leaving aside the sniper threat, which is a very real threat, the surveillance and communication interceptions that this proximity affords them the ability to partake in is it truly boggles the mind that this was allowed to happen. And we've talked about before how it's crazy that China has been allowed to buy farmland adjacent to military bases across the country. Now they can basically build a sniper's nest steps away from the White House. They can set up listening posts, text intercepts. I mean, this has got to be a counter surveillance nightmare for the Secret Service, for all of the intelligence operations that are in these. This is the seat of power, and our greatest geopolitical adversary has property. Can somebody please make that make sense? Please make that make sense, because it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever that this was allowed to happen. Gordon Chang said that no Chinese citizen should own real estate that lets them surveil a sensitive federal installation, period. Yet here we are. And I don't know about you, and maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen any response from any official. If there has been some, please let me know, but I haven't seen anything. It's been crickets from what I can tell. China is our enemy. BZ loves to say China is our enemy. We talked about Islam. Islam is our enemy. Islam has been at war with us forever. The DSA is most definitely an enemy of this constitutional republic. And now we have China, our greatest geopolitical enemy, in DC, owning property. Really, I don't get it. I don't get it. I haven't heard a senator. I haven't heard a congressman. I haven't heard any White House officials, cabinet members, nothing. Sarah Hindala, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for the support. We appreciate it. That is amazing. Thank you so much. We have spent years watching the Chinese buy this land, like I said, next to our military installations, and they're in DC. Why are we allowing this? You can't buy land in China. You can't buy property in China. You can, but the regulations and the stipulations are so outrageous that it's hardly worth it. And they can basically just take it from you whenever they want. If this was just a matter of I don't know. I don't get it. It boggles the mind. It truly does. All right, let's China is our enemy. And this should absolutely have never been allowed to take place. Yet here we are. All right, let's I want to talk about, this has been on the docket for at least a week now, maybe longer. But I want to talk about this flock safety nonsense. And the flock surveillance cameras have been, or flock security has been facing a lot of backlash lately. And the CEO, Garrett Langley, basically says that all of the backlash is just a misunderstanding. It's a result of misinformation being disseminated on social media. People worried about their privacy, people being stalked, smashed cameras. All of it is just related to a simple misunderstanding. Never mind that your plate readers have been used to stalk exes and not even exes, just stalk potential, I don't even know if you could call it potential, stalk people in general by unhinged law enforcement officers. None of that is the problem. The problem is just the messaging or something. He says that he says that we're not Big Brother. Well, that is comforting. Big Brother was actually upfront and honest about what they were doing. But this guy just wants you to treat 120,000 cameras logging the comings and goings of every vehicle that passes by as just neighborhood watch or something. But when you have reports of officers, and in some cases the chief of police, leadership in the police department, using the cameras to stalk people, he's been on an apology tour lately. He says that this backlash kills him, but he created, or he was instrumental with a couple of his partners in creating this monster. And I don't understand how he couldn't have anticipated what this could turn into. And I see it. My wife and I, we watch a lot of British TV, and that pains me to say because British TV and British police procedurals are better than 95% of the garbage that you see on American TV, but I digress. But one of the things that always struck me about that is they would be able to just, what they call ANPR, and just find people as they're driving along. And that's what we're turning into with these flock cameras. And do we want that? I don't. And I know this has been in the news for a while, but I wanted to actually, and I did talk about it, I think a week or so ago, but I wanted to do research on it and actually go beyond the headlines of what everyone was talking about on X and TikTok. And this is a disaster. And I know that in certain cases it can work. I know that in certain cases it has helped find missing people and it has helped solve crimes, but at what cost? At what cost in the long run? These agencies that Flock Security has contracts with have one of the most powerful tracking tools ever created. And we didn't notice until the abuse of it started hitting the headlines, because they wanted to keep it under wraps. They wanted to have this in place. They wanted to have it a permanent part of infrastructure, to the point where once people noticed it, it was already ingrained and too late to turn back. That's what they wanted. They wanted to get to the point where people just say, "Oh, that's just how it is." The UK is one of the most surveilled places in the world. There are cameras everywhere. And that's what they wanted here. And thankfully, there are still enough liberty-minded individuals to speak up and say no. Now they're trying to push these new quote unquote safeguards, as if the retention period from 30 days to 7 days it doesn't mean anything, because they can write the contracts to whatever they want. So yeah, that's the default. The default may be 7 days, but they can write a contract that says 45 days. They can probably write a contract that says they can hold this data for over a year. Who knows? But this is the same guy. This same CEO said that people who are mapping the cameras, he called those activists terrorists. Yeah, he apologized for that, but you can't unring that bell, my friend. The pattern is the pattern is pretty obvious at this point. They overreach, people get outraged, they pull back and rebrand, and that's just supposed to appease everyone. Meanwhile, the pullback and rebrand is nothing. It's eye candy. It doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. Now, I very rarely agree with anything the ACLU says, but on this particular instance, they're spot on. They said that these tweaks that they are proposing and that they've implemented is just a PR move, a PR stunt, and they're right. As I said, they can write the contract to retain the data forever, how long they want. The cameras still scan everything that passes by. They can still share data between jurisdictions, but the 7-day default, that's supposed to make everybody feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And I said before, and I acknowledge that it can work. And Flock doesn't hesitate to tell you about all the investigations and the thousands of missing people that were found, as if that's supposed to just settle the argument, because my question still stands: at what cost? Finding some stolen cars, and as awesome as it is to find missing people, that is not a complete answer to building a searchable database and a diary, basically, of every vehicle in town, especially the ones where the cameras have been positioned directly in front of people's driveways. Cities are canceling some contracts. Cameras are getting destroyed, which doesn't really help. It might feel good. I think I said this before, it might feel good, but it doesn't help anything. They're just going to put up another one. And then if they catch you, then you're facing some serious jail time. In some places, that property destruction is a felony. If you live in an area where they're proposing putting up these Flock cameras, you need to go to your city council, you need to go to your mayor, you need to go to whatever governing body is in charge of that, and let your voice be heard that you do not want this. Because this is a privacy disaster. All right, let's move on. I did want to touch on the primary results that happened a couple days ago. Florida, Wyoming, and Alaska are the three big ones. I think there were a couple of others, but those are the three big ones. And of course, Byron Donalds won his primary with about 48% of the vote. Should have been more, but it is what it is, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Ashley Moody, she won pretty handily in her Senate primary, and DSA member Angie Nixon, she beat Alexander Vindman. Alexander Vindman is the guy who, well, let's just say Alexander Vindman should never have been anywhere near this race. But he raised a ton of money. Allegedly spent a ton of money, but nobody ever saw him out on the trail. Nobody saw any ads. I think he thought he was just going to run away with it because he's Alexander Vindman. But I think he forgot he was in Florida. But he lost to this DSA upstart, Angie Nixon. And President Trump, he had a typical Trumpian response. And I thought I had it. Oh, yeah, let's take a look at this.
Congressional map approved during a 2026 special legislative session. The new boundaries have forced some longtime office holders into more competitive contests. One of those.
He's talking about Debbie Wasserman Schultz in that one. She won handily, unfortunately, but she's got some work to do with the black vote.
Races includes Democratic Socialist-backed House candidate Oliver Larkin going after establishment Democratic Representative Jared Moskowitz. That race marks the last major primary for the DSA this year. Also happening Tuesday in Florida, the primary to replace Governor Ron DeSantis, who is term limited, and former Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody will have to defend her Senate seat after she was appointed to fill Marco Rubio's place when he became Secretary of State. Now, in Alaska,
I thought that had something about Vindman, but it didn't. But we might come back to that. But either way, it doesn't really matter because Vindman's not. He's not going to run. He's out of the race, and his political career is likely over, honestly. So good riddance to him. But in Wyoming was one of the few states where Republicans seemed to actually turn out. Not as much as I'd like, but still they turned out. 150,000 ballots were cast out of 274,000 registered voters. And of those, I mean, that's total registered voters. And of those, 88% were Republican. So that turnout, I wish were a little higher, but the fact that 88% of the ballots cast were Republicans is encouraging. It means that there are some Republicans somewhere that actually do want to vote. That's been one of my biggest complaints about Republicans over the years, is that for whatever reason, they just don't want to vote. I don't get it. Now, Eric Barlow, he beat Megan Degenfelder, who was endorsed by Trump for governor. Harriet Hageman she took her Senate primary with 65% of the vote. And Chuck Gray won his House primary with 25% of the vote, which is crazy. But it's still a problem, even though there were a lot of Republican votes cast. It's still a problem that so many people just don't get out there and vote. Alaska is a big offender. There were about 134,000 ballots cast out of 602,000 registered voters. That's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. Even in a midterm, I know the turnout is low in a midterm primary. I get that, but come on, 22%. That's ridiculous. I mean, this primary was decided by a fraction of the people in the state. That's how you end up with people like an AOC and a Zohran Mamdani. Because in New York, it was a similar percentage that elected her to her seat. I think it was like 17% of the people in her district voted. And I can't remember the exact percentage of the registered voters that voted for Mamdani, but it was low. It was in the 20s. It's like people just shrug when your freedom is at stake. And what are they going to do when Muslims infiltrate Alaska? Alaska, Alaska was ugly. Democrats are a very small slice of the pie when it comes to voters. But Jonathan Crest Tompkins and Tom Begich took the 2 top spots for governor. I don't understand. I don't get it. And Dan Sullivan, he won his Senate primary, but he got a lower share of the vote than his Democrat counterpart, Mary Peltola. The Republicans have a big problem. Republicans have a big problem when it comes to turnout. And I can scream into this microphone all I want. I can talk to people. I can text people, tell them to go vote. But if you don't have a sense of urgency about what's going on now, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. %22 of the electorate voting in Alaska is, again, pathetic. Now we got some time between now and November to get people fired up and ready to vote, but the only thing I can really do at this point is pray, because I'm not optimistic without some divine intervention getting in the mix, honestly. It doesn't make it again, it boggles the mind that people are just so willing. When Benjamin Franklin was asked what kind of government they created, he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Well, people seem to be willing to just hand it over. And I don't know why. Do they think that just by virtue of being America that it's just gonna work? It doesn't make any sense. Do that many people hate this country now? Have that many people been infected by the government school system that teaches everyone to hate this country? Has it reached that pitch already? I pray that's not the case. Yeah, Lydia, I'm with you. I'm with you there. The church not being watchmen on the wall is a problem. It is a problem. There was a time when the church was the institution that was engaged and kept this country on track, and those days are gone, unfortunately. I pray we can get them back. I pray we can get them back. There was one other thing I wanted to get into, and I've talked about this guy quite a bit. We don't live in Texas anymore, but this guy James Tallarico, he just keeps stepping in it, man. And he He was on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne. I refuse to call him by that stupid name. And this was after, I believe, there might have been before, the information about Carmelo Anthony came out. I'm pretty sure they're talking about the fact that the judge was taken off the case. But this is James Tallarico pandering once again to Black folks. Check this out.
Texas, we see what happened with Carmelo Anthony, and you said it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I've done a lot of work in the State House on justice reform, and right now we've got a system that doesn't serve all Americans equally, and we know that Black Texans have been have not gotten the justice they deserve in many cases. And
well, I will say this: Carmelo Anthony did not get the justice he deserved. 35 years was not justice. I'll just put that out there.
I'm not an expert on this particular case, but I know that there were no Black members of the jury. And to me, that's the only evidence you need to really prove that this system is not working for Black Texans.
Texas.
That's the only evidence you need. Oh my goodness. This must have been before all that information came out. But then again, I don't know that if that information was known that it would even make a difference to these fools. I really don't. But wait, there's more, because he actually said something even dumber than that. Let's oh my goodness. Listen to this nonsense.
God is not a Presbyterian. God is not a Christian. God is not a noun at all. God is a verb.
What?
God is not a being.
Wow.
God is being itself. God is love. And that's why Jesus is against anything that gets in the way of that love between neighbors, including religion.
If this is what they are teaching in seminary, wow. God is a verb. I have heard some ridiculous things in my time. God is a verb. I'm pretty sure that takes the cake. Wow. None of the Texans I know would be well represented by this guy. Even some of the left-wing ones, honestly. Wow, that blows my mind. Honestly, blows my mind. But anyway, that's going to do it for us here on the Mission Ready Men Briefing. I am Big E, and you've been watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men Briefing right here on the SHR Media Network. And in about a half an hour, you can catch my good friend BZ. The saloon is open every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. So he will be bringing the heat in about a half an hour from now. So be sure and check him out. And I believe Lyle is going to be back on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific, I believe. I know that there was some issues with his coming back, but I'm pretty sure he will be back this week. Please like and subscribe and share all of these great shows, and pray for us that we continue to have a breakthrough so we can reach as many people as we possibly can. But that is going to do it for us here today. We're not just here to to speak into the ether. We're here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if any of what we said here today resonated with you, please don't just watch, but share it. Bring another man, bring another woman into the fight. And if you want to wear what we stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of the great designs that we have about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, check out the SHR shop and check out all of the merch from the guys' shows and our logo tees and great mug that we have. Check it all out, and be sure to pick up one of the last remaining 250 reasons to read source documents t-shirts. That's a great t-shirt. I had it on one of the recent shows we had here today, so be sure and check that out. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.